Hey, good morning. Today's Bible study comes from Mark chapter 6, verses 30 through 44, and it reads as follows. The apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all they had done and taught. Then, because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, he said to them, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. But many who saw them leaving recognized them and ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. By the time it was late in the day, so his disciples came to him. "This is a remote place," they said, "and it's already very late. Send the people away so that they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat." But he answered, "You give them something to eat." They said to him, "That would take more than half a year's wages. Are we to go and spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat?" "How many loaves do you have?" he asked. "Go and see." When they found out they said, "Five and two fish." Then Jesus directed them to have all the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and fifties. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to his disciples to distribute to the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. They all ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces of bread and fish. The number of men who had eaten was 5,000. Amen. Well, the apostles had gathered around Jesus and was telling them about what they had done and who they had taught. They had been out. Remember, Jesus sent them out, and he had gave them authority to cast out demons, and he had trained his people to do what they were supposed to do. And then, with their obedience and faith to the training, they received also the abilities that Jesus gave them. Then, because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, he said to them, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." Well, first of all, just like Jesus had people following him when he was doing everything, when he sent his disciples out, they came in the same way. They were following them. They had been healed. They had seen miracles. They had been taught. And the disciples didn't have a chance to eat. So what does Jesus say to them? Jesus tells them to do what he did. "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." Not only resting physically, but they also needed spiritual rest because they had been working and probably were exhausted and needed to sit there and recharge and praise up and get filled because they had been out there doing work, spiritual, godly work. So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. But who saw them leaving? Many saw them leaving. They recognized who they were. And just like Jesus had crowds following them, they ran after them and on foot and from all the towns, and they got there ahead of them. When Jesus landed and saw the large crowd, what does he do? He does what he always does. He had compassion on us. And he said they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he knew they needed some guidance. He knew they needed some protecting. He knew they needed to follow somebody. So what does he do? He begins teaching them many things, many things. It didn't say a few things, many things. By that time, it was late in the day. It was late. So his disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place," they said, "and it is already very late," because they were tired. It was very late. "Send the people away so that they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat." And that was the disciples asking Jesus to send them away. But Jesus answered, "Hey, don't forget we still are doing work and these are still God's people. So you give them something to eat." And he was showing us how to have compassion and how to love. And even when we are weary, we are still to do good. So you give them something to eat. They said to him, that would take more than half a year's wages. Uh-oh. We stepped back in the man because all of a sudden it came to money, and that was a lot. We didn't want to do that. We didn't want to spend that money, and we may not have had that money. Are we to go and spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat? Now, this was a question they asked because why would they spend their money on them? And if I'm not mistaken, they didn't have much money, but they were going to spend it on them. How many loaves do you have, he asked. Go and see. Simple answer, go and see. When they found out, they said 5 and 2 fish. So they didn't have a lot. Then Jesus directed them to have all the people sit down in groups on the green grass. Get the people together, have them sit down, and let's see how we can resolve this situation. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and fifties. So the people sat down, they were listening, they were being obedient, and taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looks up to heaven. He gave thanks and he broke the loaves. Now, even in his lack of or scarcity of food, he still did what? He looked up to heaven and he gave thanks and broke the loaves. He gave thanks for what he had. He gave thanks in his scarcity because of God's abundance to even have that there for him. He thanked God for what he had. He acknowledged that this is what I have, Lord, and I will do my best with what I have. Because you notice he didn't say, Father, give me more. He just gave him thanks. So what does he do after that? He gave thanks and he broke the loaves. Then he gave them to his disciples to distribute to the people. So they out there distributing this food. He also divided the 2 fishes among them all. Oh man, this little bit of bread and this fish, but he blessed it. He had it blessed and he thanked God for what he had. Now watch what God does, because we forget this part. They all ate and were satisfied. They all ate and they were satisfied. It didn't say he increased what they had. It didn't say there was more bread that showed up. It didn't say that the fish grew or more fish came. But the Lord made it so that they all ate and were satisfied. But then when you look at how the Lord works, because he shows out. He shows out sometimes. If you look at verse 43, it says, and the disciples picked up 12, as in disciples, basketfuls of broken pieces of bread and fish. So there was extra. So in your scarcity, you went to God thanking him, and he provided your abundance. And we never truly see this abundance sometimes because we get caught up in us, man. And the Lord was telling them, hey, don't get caught up in man. Get caught up in your abundance of me and all that I have and my riches and my glory, so that you will know that I can and will take care of you. So when they get done, it tells you how many people they fed. And it just tells you the men. It says the number of the men who had eaten was 5,000. 5,000. It didn't say nothing about the kids. It didn't say nothing about the women. It just said the men. So just think of how big this crowd was. And Jesus blessed this food and gave thanks for what he had. Not asking for more, not saying, Lord, I do not have enough, not acting like he was defeated, not acting like he didn't have confidence. He just thanked him for what he had, and he let God's true abundance fill these people up. Amen.